Hi, I'm Hope. Welcome back or welcome to the 100 Days Coding Challenge. And today we'll be building a full stack e commerce website. But we're going to be taking this for a period of 10 days within the 100 Days Coding Challenge. So, what we're going to be doing in e commerce. So, e commerce website is a website where you buy and sell goods. You can buy a product, people can visit the site. We have so many examples of e commerce websites, Jumia, Temu, and on and so on and so forth. So though this is more like a client's project, but I want to use it to explain the whole thing about e-commerce and how it works. So, but I'm going to be using, as a JavaScript developer, I'm going to make use of JavaScript for the build, and I'm going to be using the framework, which is Stack. So for the backend, I'm going to be working with JavaScript framework, which is Node.js. And for the front end, I'm going to be working with React. And as usual, the tools I'm going to be using for a code editor, I'll be using VS Code, Visual Studio Code. For my cloud storage, I'm going to be using AWS, Amazon Web Server. For the product upload, image upload. For API testing, I'm going to make use of Postman. And for payment gateway, I'm going to make use of Stripe. And what else? Okay, for database, I'm going to make use of MongoDB. So I have MongoDB Compass installed here. So because I should be using Postgres, but because MongoDB can also handle the database we're using. And for deployments, obviously we all use Git, we all use Vercel. We sometimes use Vercel. So I'm going to be deploying it to the GitHub, to a repository in GitHub before pushing to the client's domain. So what are we doing in today's e-commerce website? So obviously over the years, coding over the years, I've built a lot of e-commerce websites, but today is different because there's every client or every company that wants an e-commerce website always have different thing they want their website to do. We call that features in programming, and we call that users, basically features in programming. So, but one thing I've discovered in e-commerce website is over the years I've built e-commerce websites where people just come in, buy and sell. But if it's for a client, or for a client, some clients will specify the type of e-commerce they want. Some might want a split payment method where they want that where people pay money, the money is going to, so it can be split to three parts. The company can also have the percent of the fund. Let's say for 100%, a client buys a product, right? The client, because there's a middleman between the customer and the owner of the business, which is a merchant. So the middleman there is the payment gateway. So the payment gateway is like the service that allow the website to accept payment online. So when you want to pay for, if you go and buy things outside with cash, it is easier to pay. You just give them cash. But when you're paying something online, you need a middleman, which is a payment gateway. For the payment gateway, like I said, I'm making use of Stripe. But there's the difference between the e-commerce website and the not what I'm going to be doing and the casual one, is what we call the BNPL method. The BNPL service means that pay now, buy later. So, and during this, I'm going to make use of a third-party endpoint called Klarna. Klarna is a very big software and big company where they handle the BNPL method. So in other words, what Klarna does is that they serve as a middleman between the customer and the owner of the business. So for instance, if you as a business owner, you sell clothes and you want to build a website, and maybe the clothes cost, let's say $100 for instance. Now some clients will tell you, oh, can I pay half of the money now, half of the money later, right? Or can I pay 30% now, you might have done some transaction with the customer, with the client, where they don't have the full payment. So Klarna helps in scenarios like that. They help you to allow to split your payments into the number of times you want. So even if you want to pay for 4 times, Klarna does the work for you. Now, how am I going to make use of Klarna? The first thing when you're making use of a third-party API is to read the documentation. The documentation is how to integrate the API. The documentation talks about how to use that company it's an embedded system on how to use that company software inside your own software. So as a backend engineer or as a front-end engineer, most of the times you make use of third-party API. It could be SendGrid, it could be Stripe, and so many third-party API, because it makes us not to stress ourselves in building from scratch, right? So in other words, we're making use of Klarna is more like what we get into the documentation and taking the API and integrating it into our software. So by doing that, Klarna so as a customer, right, the advantage of this is Klarna pays you. So you're not depending on the customer to pay you. So if the customer tells you, oh, they don't have money to pay at once, that is not your own business. Klarna is going to pay you the full money. So it will now be the customer versus Klarna. And sometimes you might say, oh, how is Klarna gaining, or are they losing? Yes, it's more like saying you want to go and borrow money from the bank, and when the bank will tell you, okay, fine, but obviously before you could borrow money from the bank, it has to go through some process. So the same thing has to do with Klarna. So Klarna you can't just use Klarna without going through this process. And after going through the process, there is a percentage for every money you are paying. And if you exceed the time for payment, whereas you're supposed to pay at this particular deadline, Klarna is going to inflate the price. So there is no way they are losing in this. Today we're going to be talking of this all e-commerce. So we're going to make use of this Klarna a lot in the project. We're going to be integrating Klarna into our e-commerce website based on clients' requirements. Alright, and tomorrow we're going to be talking of every other things we are going to be doing. So, but this is the overview of the whole project. We are going to be working for 10 days within the 100 days coding challenge, and I'm very sure that you are going to learn a lot from this. Thank you.